Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're doing a deep, cinematic dive into the top 10 richest people on Earth in late 2025. This is not a shallow countdown. I'll walk you through who's on the list, what created their fortunes, the business moves and market shifts that shaped 2025, and what this all tells us about where extreme wealth is being made in the modern era. Before we begin, quick reminder. The numbers I quote are estimates based on the latest publicly available valuations and market prices, and they change every trading day. If you want the absolute latest after watching this video, check the Forbes real-time billionaire tracker or Bloomberg's daily rankings. Links are in the description. Now let's get into it. Elon Musk sits at the very top of this list, and for good reason. His net worth in the late 2025 snapshots most commonly cited hovers around $342 billion, a figure built mainly from massive holdings in Tesla and private stakes in SpaceX, along with other ventures that have captured investor imagination. Tesla's electric vehicle business remains his most liquid and visible asset, but it's the combination of Tesla, ongoing SpaceX valuations, and his high-profile bets in AI and social platforms that sustain his position. 2025 was a year when AI gained extraordinary investor attention, and companies with AI upside or hardware exposure enjoyed outsized gains. Musk's companies, through product announcements, hardware initiatives, and sheer market narrative, benefited from that broader shift. While his headline net worth might seem impossibly large, remember that much of it is tied to public stock prices and private valuations which can wobble day to day. Forbes' consolidated lists and profile pages reflect the April and autumn 2025 assessments that commonly place him as the world's richest person. Next on the roster is Mark Zuckerberg, whose wealth is the product of founding, scaling, and maintaining control of Meta Platforms, the company behind Facebook, Instagram, and the family of apps and services that dominate social media. Late 2025 estimates put Zuckerberg's net worth in the low hundreds of billions, typically around $216 billion in many analyses. Meta's transformation into an AI-driven advertising and content platform, plus the restructuring of its investments into new forms of commerce and generative media, helped propel the company's market capitalization upward during 2025. Zuckerberg's fortune is a demonstration of the power of network effects and ownership of core social infrastructure. Long after the era of rapid user growth, the monetization and AI integration phases of the business create enormous value for shareholders and founders alike. For viewers, what's striking is how social platforms have matured from user growth engines into machine learning-driven ad marketplaces, and the resulting cash flows anchor huge paper fortunes. Jeff Bezos remains near the very top of the world's wealth rankings as well. Bezos' involvement with Amazon, which continues to be the backbone of global e-commerce and cloud infrastructure, has kept his net worth among the planet's highest. Many late 2025 snapshots estimate him at roughly $215 billion. Amazon's AWS cloud business, marketplace dominance, and continued investments across logistics, consumer devices, and entertainment underpin the corporate value that flows through to large shareholders like Bezos. He also maintains private investments and new ventures that form part of his long-term wealth strategy. Bezos' story is a reminder of how platform companies that control commerce and cloud infrastructure create sustained value that endures across cycles, converting market leadership into multi-generational wealth. Larry Ellison's appearance in the very top bracket is a lesson in longevity and compound control. The co-founder and longtime executive of Oracle has parlayed decades of enterprise software leadership into an enormous stake in a company that continues to command high margins and recurring revenue, particularly in cloud software and database services. Ellison's estimated net worth sits near the $200 billion mark in late 2025 estimates often quoted by major outlets. Unlike some newer billionaires whose fortunes move with social trends or ad spending, Ellison's wealth illustrates the old but enduring power of enterprise software contracts, customer lock-in, and a steady, cash-flow-rich business model. Ellison also invests his capital in other firms and assets, which helps diversify his holdings, but Oracle's fundamentals remain the anchor of his net worth. Luxury conglomerates and old economy retail still make the top 10 list, reminding us that the creation of enormous wealth is not limited to Silicon Valley. Bernard Arnault and his family, who lead LVMH, represent how high-end brands and the control of aspirational consumer goods can generate immense economic value. LVMH's portfolio of luxury labels, from haute couture to watches and spirits, benefits from pricing power and global reach, and in 2025 the company's valuation kept Arnault in that top tier, an example of how brand equity, artisanal craftsmanship, and supply chain mastery translate to paper billionaires. Similarly, Amancio Ortega, the founder of Inditex and the primary force behind Zara, shows how fashion and fast retailing at scale can build colossal fortunes when a company achieves global breadth and operational mastery. These fortunes are less volatile in small day-to-day price swings than purely tech-linked stakes, but they are exposed to consumer cycles and global demand trends. Warren Buffett is also part of the top 10 in late 2025 estimates. His fortune, built through decades of disciplined value investing and the diversification embedded within Berkshire Hathaway, is one of the clearest examples that careful capital allocation and patient ownership can create and preserve massive wealth. Buffett's stake in Berkshire, combined with the companies Berkshire owns outright or partially, offers exposure to insurance float, energy, consumer goods, and industrial assets, a different wealth profile from founders of tech companies. Buffett's presence on this list serves as a reminder that while technology and AI have dominated headlines, the bedrock of long-term capital accumulation often still lies in classic investment approaches and diversified holdings. Alphabet's co-founders, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, appear as separate entries in the late 2025 top 10 snapshots. These two founders built Google into the dominant search engine and then pivoted the product stack to include cloud computing, advertising technology, maps, Android, YouTube, and a sprawling set of moonshot and AI research projects. Page and Brin's wealth is primarily linked to their equity stakes in Alphabet, and as AI and cloud computing became ever more central to corporate value during 2025, their positions benefited. The continued expansion of AI-enabled products and the monetization of data and services related to search and advertising provided the core engines for Alphabet's market valuation improvements over the year. Page and Brin's story demonstrates how building a company with multiple durable revenue streams and a culture of reinvestment into cutting-edge tech keeps founder wealth near the summit of global rankings. Another entry in the top 10 sometimes observed in late 2025 lists is Steve Ballmer. Ballmer, the former CEO of Microsoft, holds significant investments and has diversified into ownership of assets like the LA Clippers plus other holdings tied to Microsoft's performance and investment returns. While his wealth is not built from a founder's current operational role the way Page and Brin's is, his earlier stewardship at Microsoft and subsequent investment strategies have secured him a place among the world's richest. The presence of multiple Microsoft-linked fortunes around the top end of these lists highlights the outsized wealth generated by pioneers of the software era. It's important to be candid about the volatility in these numbers. The global market environment of 2025 saw strong tailwinds for AI and semiconductor exposure, and that created dramatic moves in the fortunes of tech magnates. A UBS report and multiple business outlets noted a surge in global billionaire wealth that was heavily influenced by AI-driven gains in a concentrated set of stocks frequently called the Magnificent Seven, which in turn benefited individuals with concentrated positions in companies tied to AI, cloud computing, and enterprise software. That macro context is the reason why some profiles rose significantly through the year while others held steady. When you watch the next chart or headline, remember that much of what looks like personal wealth is really a function of how the market values the companies these individuals founded or control. Beyond the simple rankings, one fascinating theme from late 2025 is how rapidly private valuations and public markets interact to create headline wealth. Space companies, private AI startups, stakes in newly public AI infrastructure firms, and secondary market trades all contributed to the complex picture of how billionaires' net worths are tallied. For instance, private valuations of companies like SpaceX often updated after new funding rounds, and those private marks can lift a founder's estimated net worth dramatically even without any public trading. Meanwhile, public companies with large institutional investor bases will see founder stakes swell or shrink in headline value as institutional flows move into or out of sectors perceived to have AI levies or defensive qualities. Another important conversation is around concentration and philanthropy. In late 2025, several commentators and philanthropic leaders publicly debated whether the ultra-wealthy are doing enough to redistribute or deploy capital towards systemic problems. Some high-profile critiques argued that despite enormous philanthropic pledges, the scale of private fortunes means public policy and systemic solutions remain necessary to address inequality effectively. At the same time, many billionaires are increasing commitments to scientific research, climate initiatives, and global health. The tension between private giving and public responsibility is central to the societal conversation about extreme wealth in 2025. Let's return to a closer look at individual trajectories and strategic moves that defined the year for these titans. Elon Musk used multiple strategic announcements tied to next-generation vehicle lines, Starship progress at SpaceX, and public statements about AI integration into Tesla's stack to keep the narrative around growth alive for investors. His willingness to take bold regulatory and strategic risks, sometimes courting controversy, kept him in headline news and sustained a market perception of him as a transformational figure across multiple industries. For Mark Zuckerberg, late 2025 was a year of consolidating AI enhancements into core social products and commercializing new content monetization methods on Instagram and Reels. This helped lift Meta's multiples and therefore the founder's net worth. Jeff Bezos continued to benefit from Amazon's durable cash flows, AWS remained a top enterprise profit center, and Amazon's scale in logistics and retail allowed it to continue to invest in next-gen fulfillment and automation technology, which investors rewarded. Larry Ellison's strategy was less about flashy product launches and more about continued enterprise deals, cloud migrations, and Oracle's focus on high-value corporate customers. That steady march of enterprise renewals, coupled with strategic balance sheet management and buybacks, kept Oracle's valuation robust in the eyes of many institutional investors. Bernard Arnault and the luxury cohort rode the luxury demand that kept high-end consumer spending resilient in many markets. Luxury brands frequently exhibit pricing power, and in 2025 that pricing power, plus a robust travel and experimental market, kept LVMH's valuation strong. Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway continued to exemplify the value of durable, capital-allocating leadership, with energy and insurance businesses contributing steady returns while the investment portfolio benefited from selective technology and industrial exposures. For the Alphabet founders, the story in 2025 was AI integration at scale, embedding large language models and related services into search, cloud offerings, and consumer products created new monetization vectors that investors rewarded, boosting founder net worths even as the company balanced regulatory scrutiny and global competition. Now let's talk implications. First, if you're an entrepreneur, the 2025 rankings underline the outsized returns that accrue when you build platforms that either control infrastructure or create dominant network effects. Search, cloud, social platforms, and e-commerce all deliver leverage. A small incremental improvement in product or monetization can scale across millions or billions of users. Second, if you're an investor, the events of 2025 are a reminder of two patterns that mattered: concentration risk and thematic rotation. A handful of tech stocks with AI exposure drove a disproportionate portion of billionaire gains. That means portfolios heavily concentrated in those stocks saw outsized returns, and founders with concentrated ownership felt those returns even more intensely. Third, if you're a policymaker or civic leader, the headlines about consolidated billionaire wealth raise real questions about taxation, antitrust, labor markets, and how to ensure broad economic participation in an era when value flows to platforms and intellectual property. Conversations about wealth taxes, corporate governance, and competitive policy have only intensified alongside the rise of platform and AI economies. Before we close, it's useful to address the question many people ask: could any of these people be a trillionaire soon? Some commentators in 2025 speculated that under certain scenarios, continued AI-led rallies and concentrated ownership could push the top few into the trillionaire range over years, especially if public markets remain frothy and private valuations keep advancing. However, that outcome depends entirely on sustained performance and multiple favorable variables: sustained revenue growth, stable macro conditions, and judicious capital markets behavior. It's a provocative thought experiment, but the path to $1 trillion in net worth is not a single event. It's decades of compounding and a lot of market luck. Caution and skepticism are warranted when reading thunderous headlines. To summarize the landscape, the top 10 richest individuals of late 2025 are overwhelmingly the product of tech dominance, but with enduring representation from luxury and diversified capital allocation. The marketplace in 2025 favored companies and founders who rode the AI wave, leveraged network effects, or controlled critical infrastructure. Volatility remained a central theme. Fortunes in the hundreds of billions are highly sensitive to market moves, but the broader reality is structural. Access to scalable business models, market dominance, and intellectual property rights remain the primary engines of extreme wealth. Thanks for watching this long-form deep dive. If you found this analysis helpful, please let me know by tapping the like button and commenting below on which billionaire strategy you want me to unpack next.